I was running lyrics, which, as you may have noticed, got screwed up a couple times because I'm human, whether you believe it or not. And knowing many of you, I know that you are definitely passionate about worshiping God, and I love that. But how many of us this week spent time worshiping by serving? I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but thank you for yes. Good for you. I can't even tell who that is, but good for you. We spend time. I know I'll put a praise and worship playlist in my car, and I will sing like it's going out of style, and if I'm doing it, it probably is going out of style because it sounds that bad. But how many times will I drive past someone on Highway 31 and say, oh, that guy's got a flat tire, but he can handle it? You know? How many times do you see someone in school who's struggling to understand something, and you're like, teacher can help him with that. I'm not going to worry about it. Well, don't you hate it when it's fun? So how many of us actually spend time worshiping through service beyond these walls? A lot of us serve here. I know that. I serve here. A lot of you serve in Adventure Beach, which is this room, but Sunday mornings for kids. A lot of you serve for CR on Friday nights. A lot of you serve helping out next door on Sunday mornings. But outside of these walls, when you're dealing with people who have no idea who Jesus is, and some of them might have heard the name, but because we don't love them the way we're supposed to, they don't give a flip about who Jesus is, because the only examples they've seen are those of us who don't care enough to love them. So how have you reached out to the hurting? And believe me, unless you are homeschooled and an only child, you sit in class with hurting people every day. How many of you have helped the hungry? How many of you have fed the thirsty? These are all things that the parable of the sheep and the goats, they talk about. Feeding the hungry, bring drink to the thirsty. How many of you have fought injustice? I don't know about all the other schools, but I know at our school, they just kind of beat it into the teacher's head. You need to keep an eye out for bullying. You know, how many of you have stood up when you've seen injustice going on towards other students or towards teachers? Teachers get bullied. It's true. I'm willing to bet that Tanner bullies his teachers every day. He's just such a person like that. Okay, not really. If you're listening on the podcast and don't know Tanner, he's not really bullied. Okay. Have you shown mercy and compassion this week? And that's basically where we want to go. If you are not trying to meet people's needs, then you are not loving people. My friend Aaron, who we've sung some of his songs next door, some of you might have heard some of his stuff, he said this a while back. It's not okay to stretch out your hands to God and not stretch out your hands to other people. It's not okay to stretch out your hands to God and not stretch out your hands to other people. Which means it's not okay to come in here and sing worship songs and to enjoy the music, even if you get that feel-good feeling, which is kind of redundant, if you're not taking that out there and loving people. In the Old Testament, in Isaiah 1, 13 through 17, I'm going to do this real quick and we're almost done. God rebuked Israel. I don't mean he said, oh, that's not a good thing. I mean, he rebuked them. And the way he puts this is very blunt and very, very straightforward and almost harsh. But here's the way things were set up. Israel didn't have Jesus like we have Jesus. He was not on the scene yet, and even when he got on the scene, most of them didn't believe he was who he said he was. But they had a series of rituals and ceremonies that they considered worship. And even back then, God didn't want the rituals and ceremonies. God wanted the relationship. It was just harder to come by because there was no Jesus. So in Isaiah 1, 13 through 17, this is God speaking. Bring your worthless offerings no longer. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath, the calling of the assemblies. I cannot endure iniquity and the solemn assembly. I hate your new moon festivals and your appointed feasts. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. All of those things that were mentioned were their forms of worship, or what they called worship. It was their ceremony, their ritual. And I kind of want to edit this out because I love the fact that it says, I hate your new moon, blah, blah, blah. It's become a burden to me. Because, let's face it, Twilight sucks. I had to throw that in there. Funny story I'll tell someone later if they come up to me afterwards and ask. Okay, so moving right along. So when you spread out your hands in prayer, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you multiply prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are covered in blood. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your deeds from my sight. Cease to do evil, learn to do good. Seek justice, reprove the ruthless, defend the orphan, plead for the widow. What God said is, if you aren't loving people, because that's what he commanded them to do, all these things at the end. Seek justice, reprove the ruthless, defend the orphan, plead for the widow.